Everyone seems to be absolutely loving the second part of the 2.6 story quest in Wuthering Waves, but in my opinion, it's at most 7 out of 10. And yes, I might be alone in this, but stick with me, okay? What you're about to hear might completely change the way you see the story. And if you enjoyed these deep dive discussions, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. It really helps me out, especially since almost 90 of you watching still are not subscribing to the channel. Hello? So if you're ready to unpack the story, the mechanics, and the moments that worked and those that did not, let's dive in, Starlights, shall we? I want to start by saying that the first part of the 2.6 was pretty solid. It delivered what was expected from the hero saga: epic fights, big stakes, and powerful characters. Augusta's personality already teased that grand scale, and the finale of part 1 was absolutely worth the build-up. You know, it had some flaws, like the absence of the characters who are directly tied to Septimons, like, I don't know, Lupa, the Great Gladiator, for example, considering how important she should be for the hand. But overall, impact of the story with the scale and executions were solid. But what really interests me and what I want to focus on in this video is actually the second part of the story. And I have to give credit to Kuro for how they decided to approach it. Splitting the 2.6 story in two halves was a good move, in my opinion. Not only did it keep engagement high across the patch, giving us Augusta arc early on and then holding back the follow-up, but it also created a contrast. Augusta and Iuno weren't just opposites in personality and design, but even their stories were presented in ways that highlighted that difference. And then came the mind games. After the first half ended, we started getting hints that something had gone terribly wrong, especially with Iuno. Kuro even went as far as removing Iuno from their official banners. And here, I'll be honest, at first I completely missed the point. I was at work when I noticed it. I made a quick community post about it on my YouTube channel, and suddenly people in the comments were like, wait, but who is Iuno? And for a moment I thought that I was losing it. But then, during a lunch break, it hit me. It wasn't random. It was a part of a meticulous plan. It immediately reminded me of the Riot's Seraphine campaign in League of Legends. Here, also, Kuro launched a whole social media style promotion to pull the community deeper into the character's narrative. And the addition of those Polaroid shots was such a nice touch. These little fragments of memory, almost the desperate attempts to be remembered. They made Iuno feel less like a flat character and more like a person with a life worth preserving. And what I love most is that the community embraced it completely. Like, it felt like we had an event that belongs to us, the wuwa community. Everyone just jumped in, speculating, sharing, piecing together the puzzle. It was organic, it was fun, and it amplified the hype for the part 2 of the story. And honestly, it freaking worked. Everyone, myself included, was waiting with excitement to see what would happen next. Then came September 17th, the day part 2 finally dropped. I was honestly so excited. And at first, it started really nicely. The continuation felt natural, the celebration of the victory, honoring every gladiator who helped, and Rover being recognized in a really symbolic way as the Rose Bearer. I loved that little detail. Giving rose petals wasn't just a ritual, it felt like a real statement of respect and unity. It set the mood beautifully. But almost right away, things got a little bit weird. As Rover, we start noticing something is off. People were giving us credit for stuff we did not even do. Instead, we know that it was Iuno's deeds. But when we tried to correct them, everyone looked at us like we are crazy. no one remembers Iuno. Not even Augusta. And this is where I got mixed feelings. So listen, I get Kuro's choice from a story perspective. From the start of the Sanguis Plateau arc, we've been called the Unwritten One, so it kind of makes sense that we are the only one remembering what others forgot. It's a cool, mysterious idea that makes you want to figure out what's really going on. But here's the thing. The story now wants us, as Rover, to care so much about Iuno that we would risk everything to save her. And honestly, I don't freaking buy it. Let's remember, in part 1, our relationship with Augusta and Iuno wasn't really about friendship or feelings. It was calculated. At least that's how I took it. They needed us because we were the Unwritten One, the key piece of their plan to save Septimond. And we helped not only because we were heroic figures, but also because we had our own goal, finding the Sentinel's artifact in Sanguis Plateau. Their plan worked, we got what we needed, it was a win-win. That's why the first half of 2.6 felt believable for me. But in part 2, that logic just disappears? Suddenly we're the only ones who would do anything for Iuno? But the truth is, we barely know her. Sure, she's sweet and we had some moments, but it's not enough to justify all the emotional weight the story puts on Rover. And Augusta, who actually had a real connection with Iuno, gets almost nothing. That's the big missed opportunity for me. If Augusta had been the one fighting for Iuno, refusing to accept that she was gone, the story would have hit way harder. Especially that they both created this plan to save Septimond. Rover could still help, like, being the thread that helps Augusta remember, but the emotional punch would come from the bond of Augusta and Iuno. Instead, it felt more like, I'm gonna say that, a fan service. Pretty fan service, sure, but kind of hollow. And honestly, this isn't even the first time they've done it, okay? Every time a big update ends, some characters just disappear. People were asking where was Lupa in 2.6. Fighting for Septimond in the Sanguis Plateau should be a huge deal for her. I mean, I'm sorry, but she was the one of the strongest gladiators. Or, in 2.5, with Federico and the Order storyline, why isn't Phoebe there? She had been in the story before. Should had a place in the Order storyline, and now poof, she gone? Making such interesting, deep characters and then not using them in the story, that's just such a waste. It makes the story feel weaker and it's frustrating because Kuro built such a rich world and relationships, but part 2 of the 2.6 just ignores so many of them. Iuno herself? Oh, come on, we all know that she's not only likable, she's our cutie pie. She simply works as a cute and lovable character. But putting Rover in the center of her arc instead of Augusta just breaks the emotional setup. Part 1 feels kinda smart, calculated, and grounded. Part 2 feels convenient. And honestly, that's the biggest flaw of 2.6 story. Okay, but now let's talk about the ending. So, a lot of people actually liked it because it felt bittersweet. And yeah, I get it. At the very end, we see that we saved Iuno, and the Septimond now has this endless possibility ahead of it. Its future isn't tied anymore to any prophecies and any path anymore. It's completely in the heads of the Septimondians themselves. That's a very nice idea, and visually, the pure white space of endless potential. Honestly, it made me tear up, I gotta admit, okay? So, there were definitely moments in the quest that were handled beautifully. When we come back to the real world and we see that Iuno is actually not on our side and the rover is left questioning whenever any of it was real. I like that. That uncertainty works well. But once again, imagine it had been Augusta instead. She spent her whole life haunted by the whispers of the black tide, never sure what's real and what's just another trick. And then she comes back from the chaos. She remembers saving Iuno, remembers the struggle, the sacrifice, the bond. But when she opens her eyes, Iuno is not there. Rover is not there. And in that silence, the whispers creep back in, twisting her thoughts, making her doubt everything. Was it all just another lie? Had she been fooled again? That moment of doubt, of complete doubt and isolation would have been heartbreaking way more than Rover's, but also would be incredibly powerful. And then imagine Rover shows up, not as some flawless, overpowered figure, but gently reassuring her, no, everything you saw was real. Iuno exists. What you remember is true. That would validate Augusta's struggle and Iuno's sacrifice. It would be human, emotional payoff that hits so much harder than the cold, ambiguous ending we got. As it is, yes, we save Iuno, bring her out of the chaos, but nobody remembers her. And the game says, oh, don't worry. With her charm, Augusta will remember her eventually, silly. But I'm sorry, how am I supposed to believe that? Iuno's biggest fear was being forgotten. That's literally why she spent her whole life worrying about her identity, creating the Polaroids. Everything she did was to be remembered. And it's gone. And now the story is like, oh, come on, it's fine. I mean, Rover's here, right? She will figure it out. I'm sorry, but I, as a Rover, I'm already thinking about the new region. So, I honestly do not care. I'm not gonna stay in Septimond any longer than I need. I mean, that was maybe outdone, but no one who was part of her life remembers her. Not her friends, not her allies, not even the people she protected. She isn't a priestess anymore. She isn't recognized. She isn't special. She is nobody. How is she supposed to navigate in that world? How does she talk to someone like Augusta, the F4, hero of heroes, when that person doesn't even remember she exists? It's heartbreaking. It completely undermines everything that made Iuno's story matter. Her choices, her sacrifices, her agency. And then we're just supposed to accept that everything's fine? And that's why, for me, this ending just doesn't really land. I'm sorry. It turns a personal, emotional story into a fan service, stripping away the weight of Iuno's experiences, existence, and personality. And while I love a good fan service, bring back Gian, this one just doesn't work as it should. That said, one of my viewers actually suggested an alternative ending that I think is super interesting. The idea is that Iuno, instead of being forgotten entirely, when comes back from the chaos after creating endless possibilities for Septimond, becomes a moon watching over Septimond. She still sacrifices herself and her choices is respected. But now she quietly oversees the world she helped protect. It's tragic, yes, but in my opinion, way more meaningful. It honors her character, her sacrifices, and still leaves Septimond free to shape its own future. I had to include this one in my video because it's such emotionally smart take that could have made the ending hit way harder in my opinion. Even though the plot had many holes in my opinion, I think the developers did something amazing with the second part of the story. The first part was all about action, falling meteors, fighting big bosses, clearing miasma, and so on and so forth. The second part, however, was supposed to be much calmer, much more subtle. The devs faced the challenge of how to present this quiet behind-the-scenes story and still make it, engaging for the players. And honestly, I think they freaking nailed it. Even if the story itself didn't hit me emotionally as much as it could have, in my opinion, the gameplay elements made the experience just as impactful as the first part, maybe even more so in some respects. They fully embraced interactive gameplay. We saw a variety of mechanics, from clicking the correct buttons at the right moment to paying attention to environmental cues. One of the most emotional moments comes when we take Iuno's hand. The simple act makes us the conduit, the only person capable of guiding her safely through the chaos. It reminded me a little bit of the film What Dreams May Come, where the protagonist descends into literal hell to save someone they love. Similarly, we are the bridge between the chaos and what remains of Iuno as we try to bring her back. And it's deeply moving. Another standout gameplay moment is when we inhabit Iuno's perspective as a priestess, trying to foresee the future of the people who comes to us. Taking the time to analyze all the objects and clues provided in the sequences was incredibly satisfying. It reminded me of these investigative or horror type games like Until Dawn, for example, where carefully examining evidence from multiple perspectives reveals the larger story. The ability to glimpse possible futures, even when that knowledge doesn't change the outcome, gives extra weight to Iuno's words that she cannot easily change fate, and yet she tries, showing her determination and bravery to do so. So the second part introduced a lot of interactive and analytical mechanics, like puzzle sequences where we must choose the correct door based on the knowledge gathered, like observation-based gameplay where attention to details matter for the story progression, emotional interactions with Iuno I mentioned, emphasizing the player's role as the unwritten one and the conduit, and moments of prophecy, reading and decision-making that feel impactful without combat. Even though part 2 was calmer and focused on the behind-the-scenes story, I found the gameplay just as enjoyable as the first part, and in some ways, even more immersive. The developers managed to make a quieter story feel interactive, personal, and so meaningful. So that's pretty much my take on 2.6 story quest in Wuthering Waves. To sum it up, I really appreciate the execution of the first part, okay? It was flashy, epic, and delivered what was expected from a hero saga, more or less. The second part, while quieter and behind the scenes, had an amazing gameplay mechanics that made it just as engaging as the first part. Now, I want to be clear, I'm not here to hate on the story or the developers. My goal is just to share my thoughts and discuss things that could have been done differently or perhaps better in my opinion. And honestly, they did a lot of things right. And listen to this. For example, even though I initially didn't plan on pulling for Iuno, at all, the way they presented her story and personality actually made me pull for her. Yep. So in that sense, their presentation worked perfectly. Personally, I feel there was a missed opportunity to fully explore the relationship between Augusta and Iuno that I think is a huge deal in a Septimon storyline. Their bond is what really anchors the story actually, and a deeper focus there could have made the emotional impact even stronger. I also completely understand if you do not agree with my opinion. I mean, I've seen that most people are really excited about the story, so I'm probably in the minority with my personal thoughts. So I am more than happy to discuss it in the comments, and maybe I made a mistake somewhere, maybe I misunderstood some part of the story. It's okay, it's normal. I'm just a human and I want to share and learn some more if you have some insights. So let's talk in the comments, but please let's do this respectfully. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to the channel to not miss those deep dives in the future. And thank you for watching. As always, stay cozy, stay shiny, and I love you so much, Starlights. Bye!